Number 10. Violent payback. A 19-year-old student named Alessandra da Costa Pereira was stabbed to death on her very own doorstep after she saved her ex-boyfriend's life. Here's how it all happened, because the details are pretty bizarre. The relationship between Alessandra and Rafael ended 3 months prior to the attack. Throughout the 3 months, Rafael had been trying to get back together, but Alessandra wasn't interested in backtracking her love life. Rafael went into a dark spiral. His life began to fall apart, and he started to go a little crazy. Anyone who's ever been through a rough breakup knows what we're talking about. But Rafael pushed it to the extreme. A few days before he knifed Alessandra in the gut, he had one particularly outrageous meltdown. He blew up her phone, and when she finally answered, he said she was going to throw himself to his death. Alessandra didn't want to get back together with him, but she didn't want him to die either. She was nice enough to rush where Rafael was having his meltdown and take him to the hospital for mental treatment. She really did save his life. Days later, he killed her. He first went to her house with a bouquet of flowers, groveling at her feet to take him back. When she refused for the final time, he pulled out his knife and stabbed her 10 times in the chest, abdomen, arms, and legs. And he did it right in front of her mom, who was standing behind the doorway screaming. Number 9. Trying to help a dog. A woman ended up dead while trying to help a dog. Her name was Christina Green, and she went out of her way to save a stray dog in trouble on the highway. But the act of kindness turned into a death sentence for the 31-year-old woman. As she tried to catch the dog and get it to safety, she was struck by a crazy man driving a truck. He literally ran her over. According to the authorities in Albertville, Christina spotted the stray dog near US 431. She was sitting in the passenger seat and ordered the driver of the car to pull over so she could try to help. She left the vehicle, crossed the northbound lanes, jumped over the median, and was smacked by a truck. It was the worst game of Frogger that's ever been played. This is a busy intersection, a lot of traffic, and it was almost pitch black when Christina tried to run across the road. The truck driver probably could have been going a little slower or paying more attention. But then again, he probably didn't even see the woman. Police say the driver cooperated with the investigation and is not facing any charges. Family members say Christina Green just celebrated a birthday and was engaged to be married. But now all of this is over because her heart was simply too big. She saw a dog in trouble and put her own life at risk to save it. Not something just any person would do. Number 8. Hit and run. A nurse was off duty when she stopped along a Rhode Island freeway early on Sunday morning to help a motorist who'd just gotten in an accident. Jennifer Toscano was on her way back from a Halloween party when she stopped along Route 95 North in Pawtucket. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and there had just been a terrible accident. A car had just rolled across the highway, and the people involved clearly needed medical attention. One was stuck in the car and couldn't get out. But here's where everything went bad. The Good Samaritan nurse was busy helping the motorist when another vehicle came out of nowhere, ran her over, and then sped off like nothing happened. The nurse died on the scene, her insides all scrambled from when she had been smacked by the huge bumper of the car. She was the mother of a teenage boy. She worked at the Bridgewater State Hospital, and she was what you might call a contributing member of society. These are all the kinds of good people you want in a society. But when we turn to the person that murdered her with the car, it was hard to say the same. Police had to chase the driver down, but they did catch him. He was then charged with drunk driving and leaving the scene of an accident. His name is Luis Baez from Massachusetts, and he was driving on a suspended license. He wasn't even supposed to be in the car, yet he still managed to run somebody over. Number 7. Good Samaritan in the subway. Roland Houston died trying to save a stranger from a vicious gang attack. It happened at a New York City subway station. A group of individuals threatened a man who was just waiting for the train. They taunted him with a knife. They didn't know this person. They had no reason to attack him, but they were teenagers, and they were up to no good. The victim was beaten mercilessly and then pushed onto the tracks. That was all in front of a witness too, and nobody did anything to help the victim getting beaten to death and pushed around. But when he hit the tracks, Roland finally jumped into action. The train was coming, and there was no time to lose. Sadly for Roland though, there was no time to get in there and save the man either. As Roland was trying to get the victim off the tracks, he was struck and obliterated by the oncoming train. Roland died immediately, but the victim of the gang assault walked away with nothing except a broken arm. Roland died a hero, giving his life for a total stranger. As for the greasy teenagers who went out of their way to try to kill a man, at least 3 have been taken into custody so far. The group was half a dozen in size, and NYPD have tracked down about half of them. All the boys are between the ages of 16 and 17, all of them facing murder and robbery charges. What would you do if you saw a gang of teenagers picking on an innocent man? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 6. Anger at a car crash. A man was killed after getting punched in the head at an intersection in Philadelphia. It all started with a fender bender in May of 2021. According to the Philadelphia police, the man who got in the crash was the employee of Wei Lin. Because the driver doesn't speak any English, he called his boss to come over and translate. Being a reasonable and good person, Wei Lin dropped what he was doing and went to the scene of the accident to help out his friend. But that was when a passenger in the other vehicle, Jose Figueroa, stepped into the street and got violent. He wasn't even the one who was driving, and yet he had the most road rage out of anyone involved. Completely unprovoked, he punched Wei Lin once in the head, so hard that he died. Wei fell to the ground unconscious from Jose's fist colliding with his skull. He was rushed to the hospital, but sadly, he passed away 3 days later. He never even knew what had happened. One second he was assisting his friend as a translator, and the next, everything was dark. Jose Figueroa has since been charged with manslaughter and will be spending the rest of his youth locked behind bars. Number 5. Death in the middle. 19-year-old Yosef Al-Hasnawi tried to start an altercation, but tragically, his attempt failed and he was killed. According to the Hamilton police, the brave young man was only trying to do what he thought was right. He tried to help a senior gentleman who was being attacked by 2 men outside his mosque. The 2 men were bullying the older one, getting rough with him, and the teen wasn't standing for it. He got between them, and that was when the men shot him to death right there on the spot. The murderers have since been charged for the death, and now Yosef's family is trying to sue the paramedics for not providing the proper treatment for their injured son. This is because, according to eyewitnesses, the paramedics who arrived at the scene took too long to treat the young boy and acted as if his wounds weren't as bad as what they really were. They were trying to shrug it off like Yosef hadn't just taken a bullet. Yosef's father and 2 brothers say the paramedics and police were both negligent by failing to provide first aid and transfer Yosef in a timely manner to the hospital. They're now trying to get $10 million in compensation for the emotional and mental distress they suffered as they watched Yosef die. Number 4. Burning down the house. In Arizona, Corey Sanders was murdered on a Sunday afternoon when he tried to help his neighbor, whose house had caught on fire. Nobody could have imagined what would happen when flames started licking the walls of their house. People in the neighborhood simply thought a fire had broken out, and the people inside were in trouble. They never could have dreamt that a maniac would drive up for no reason, get out of their car, and start shooting everybody. At 3:45 p.m., fire crews were dispatched. This was around the same time that Corey ran over and tried to lend his own hand. But something else was happening in the same vicinity at the same time. An ambulance had been dispatched to a park just across the street, and these emergency vehicles showed up with their sirens blaring. And that was when Leslie Scarlett, a criminal who had just been released from jail after a 6-year sentence for armed robbery, decided he was going to go on a killing spree. Leslie walked up to the ambulance, put his gun in the window, and shot the EMT in the driver's seat right in the head. He also shot the EMT in the passenger seat in the arm and chest. One was taken to the ICU in critical condition, while the other was taken to the hospital with minor injuries. Feeling good about shooting the 2 paramedics, Leslie then walked across the street to the burning home, where firefighters had started battling the flames. Corey was also there trying to help. Leslie stood in the middle of the street, calmly reloaded his gun, and then started shooting at anybody and everything. Corey was shot in the head and killed instantly, right in front of his 11-year-old boy. Another neighbor was grazed by a bullet. One firefighter was struck in the arm, and then Leslie drove away. Police eventually caught up to Leslie at an intersection, where a firefight ensued. Officer Danny Leon shot back, incapacitating Leslie. The shooter was brought to the hospital, where he was later pronounced dead. Number 3. An angry customer. A man at a grocery store became so upset that a young girl cut in front of him in the line that he punched her, punched the cashier, and then stabbed the Good Samaritan who tried to get between him and the young women. It happened in Berwyn at Valley's Produce. It was 10 o'clock in the morning, and this guy was already having the worst day of his life. The girl who cut in front of him was just 14 and she hadn't even cut in front of him to buy anything. According to the police chief, she had just been asking the cashier how much the bottle cost. But the customer got mad anyway. He started swearing. He punched the girl in the face. He punched the girl's mother, and then he tried to flee the store. That was when the Good Samaritan stepped in. He wasn't able to let some psycho back onto the street after he had beat up a little girl. But by the time he realized the irate customer had a knife, it was already plunged into his stomach. The man was taken to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead just an hour later. Meanwhile, the customer was desperately trying to get away. A second Good Samaritan confronted him as he tried to make his escape, and the second guy was stabbed in the torso. It wasn't a life-threatening injury, and he was later released from the hospital. Police eventually found the suspect hiding in a random backyard and arrested him. Number 2. Crushed by wreckage. In British Columbia, Canada, a Good Samaritan stopped along the side of the highway to help the victim of a crash. But he wasn't run over by a drunk driver in the middle of the night, not even attacked by a rampaging moose on the side of the road. Instead, the wreckage shifted suddenly as he was trying to help the victim, and the whole mess fell and crushed him. According to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Good Samaritan was traveling along Highway 93. He witnessed a green Chevrolet Tahoe lost control, veer into the oncoming lane, and then plunged down an embankment. But he wasted no time hurrying to the rescue. He climbed down the 150-foot embankment to help the driver trapped in the vehicle. But as he was trying to get the driver out, the wreckage shifted and rolled. It went down the embankment like a snowball, crushing the Good Samaritan, as if somebody had let loose a giant bowling ball from the top of the gully. And number 1, failed rescue. In Georgia, 2 women got struck on the railroad tracks. Shirley Treadwell, 93, and Deborah Hall, 66, drove onto the railroad tracks and couldn't get their vehicle going again. This normally wouldn't be too big of a deal, except the fact that an oncoming train was speeding towards them. A man named Chris Burkett, a guy who just so happened to have recently survived his house being leveled by a tornado, saw the women in distress and ran to help. As he was trying to get them out of their vehicle, the train ran all 3 of them over. It's not clear how exactly the women got stuck. They were driving an SUV and shouldn't have had any trouble getting off some measly train tracks. But whatever the case, they just couldn't move the vehicle. And even though the train was only about 20 yards away, Chris didn't hesitate to try to rescue them. He went straight to the car, desperately trying to open the door and get the women out, but the train was coming too fast. There just wasn't enough time. Chris could have jumped out of the way and saved himself, but he continued his rescue effort until the very last moment. When the train hit, all 3 of them died pretty much instantly. What's the most tragic thing you've ever seen happen to somebody who just wanted to help? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching. For more shocking videos, remember to hit subscribe and check out the other great stuff from the channel. We'll see you next time.